Everyone's hyped that the X-Men will finally fight alongside the Avengers in Avengers Doomsday. But in the comics, whenever these two teams meet, it usually ends in disaster. If Marvel follows the comics playbook, Doomsday might not just be Avengers vs. Doom, it could repeat the same mistakes from Avengers vs. X-Men. In this video, I'm breaking down the entire history of the X-Men and Avengers in the comics, and how that history might be the key to understanding what happens in Avengers Doomsday. Hi, I'm Mikey Roberts. As I said in the intro, the Avengers and X-Men have a very complicated history in the comics, and that history could be critical to understanding what's going to happen in Doomsday. In this video, I'll be taking you through the entire history, from the first crossovers in the 60s and 70s, all the way through to 2012's epic Avengers vs. X-Men run, and explaining all the details in these comics that could provide clues as to how the X-Men will factor into Doomsday. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get straight into it. The first crossovers between the Avengers and X-Men took place during the 60s and 70s, and were classic hero misunderstanding stories. The typical pattern of these crossovers was consistent across all these early comics. Typically, the Avengers would be investigating a global security threat, but the X-Men would already be involved because it was related to mutants. After some misunderstanding and a big fight, they would be forced to team up to defeat the real villain, who was usually Magneto. These early stories established the Avengers as public heroes who were backed by governments and world authorities, while the X-Men were portrayed as untrusted outsiders who were trying to protect a world that feared them. The next big crossover happened in 1987 with the 4-issue miniseries X-Men vs. the Avengers. In this series, fragments of Magneto's old base, Asteroid X, began to fall on Cambodia, causing massive destruction. In response to this calamity, international governments enlist the Avengers to arrest Magneto for crimes against humanity. However, he was leading the X-Men at the time, so the mutants arrived to secure the tech and tried to protect Magneto and prove that he had changed. Also entering the fray were the Soviet super soldiers, who were trying to execute Magneto for sinking one of their submarines many years earlier. Magneto's big hero moment comes when he found his old helmet but realised that it was booby-trapped. He ended up saving the Avengers from the resulting explosion. This shows that even when the Avengers are hunting him, Magneto is willing to prove that he's not the villain they think he is. But Magneto doesn't run forever. In issue number 4, he voluntarily surrenders to the World Court to stand trial for his crimes. The trial is political theatre. Lots of people gather outside the court to protest, resulting in conflict between mutant haters and supporters. In the end, the court dismisses all charges, finding that Magneto acted in self-defense. However, it's later revealed that Magneto used a mind control device on the judges to ensure a fair hearing, leaving it morally grey as to whether he really got justice or whether he forced it. This series is important because it shows the Avengers as world police, while the X-Men were acting as a persecuted minority who were only trying to defend one of their own. But the biggest crossover happened in 2012's Avengers vs. X-Men series. In this series, the Phoenix Force returns to Earth, which leads to a massive split between the Avengers and X-Men. The X-Men believe that Phoenix is coming to jumpstart the mutant race after their near extinction in House of M. However, the Avengers see the Phoenix as a world-ending threat that must be stopped. The X-Men believe that a mutant messiah figure called Hope Summers is the last hope for mutant survival and rebirth. However, the Avengers believe that Hope needs to be taken into protective custody. In the first phase of the series, Captain America and Cyclops become the main matchup, with fights across Utopia, the Moon, Wakanda and more. This all culminates in a battle on the blue area of the Moon. The Avengers bring a massive Phoenix killer armor that was built by Tony Stark. Tony uses the armor to shoot at the Phoenix, but instead of killing it, the blast shatters the Phoenix, with the fragments possessing Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Colossus and Magik, who become the Phoenix Five. The focus in this phase centers on mutant self-determination versus global security. In Phase 2, the Phoenix Five return to Earth and try to fix everything. The Avengers are now the outlaws. They believe this power will eventually corrupt the X-Men, and they are right. They operate out of Wakanda, launching guerrilla strikes against the X-Men's Utopia, resulting in the line beginning to blur between utopia and authoritarianism. In the third phase, Cyclops goes into full Dark Phoenix mode. This results in some major consequences, including the death of Professor X, and mutants return across the world after the No More Mutants era. After the events of the series, a deep, long-lasting rift forms between the Avengers and X-Men. If 1987 was a legal dispute, 2012 was a global catastrophe. It showed us what happens when the Avengers try to police a cosmic policy they don't understand, and what happens when heroes like Cyclops get a taste of the absolute power Doom is chasing. After Avengers vs. X-Men, Marvel started to slowly push them towards being allies instead of foes. Some X-Men went on to join Avengers adjacent teams, including in the series The Uncanny Avengers, which was released in 2013. These stories examined public mistrust in both the X-Men and the Avengers after the Phoenix Force disaster. Some people begin to question whether the Avengers were ever really fighting for mutant rights or only global order. In more recent eras, mutants have begun to establish their own nations, such as Krakoa. In these stories, the Avengers have been forced to accept the mutants as sovereign states as opposed to a persecuted minority. So, what does this all mean for Avengers Doomsday? The Avengers vs. X-Men pattern is not an accident. Usually, the Avengers are trying to save the world, whereas the X-Men think they're saving their own kind. If the mutants show up in the middle of a major multiversal crisis, the Avengers could see them as yet another threat. If we look to the 1987 series, we see that the governments of the world enlisted the Avengers to arrest Magneto. In Doomsday, global authorities might believe that the X-Men are responsible for the multiversal crisis, and could again task the Avengers with combating them to save the world. In the 2012 series Avengers vs. X-Men, the X-Men believed that the Phoenix Force was pivotal to their survival. Likewise, they might believe that Dr. Doom and the Incursions could be the key to their survival. This could pit them against the Avengers, who want to destroy Doom to save the world. Avengers vs. X-Men saw a lot of collateral damage, with entire nations being obliterated, and the blame being put on the X-Men. Likewise, there's definitely going to be a lot of destruction as a result of the multiversal crisis in Doomsday, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see the X-Men being blamed for it, and the Avengers not fully trusting them. In the post-Avengers vs. X-Men era, the X-Men went from being a persecuted minority to a full political force. In Doomsday, they could also arrive on the scene as an entire power block representing the entire mutant civilization. So if you look at the comics' history, every time the Avengers and X-Men meet, you see the same three themes: fear of power, political pressure, and mutant survival at any cost. Avengers Doomsday has the perfect ingredients to repeat that: multiversal chaos, godlike power, and a new group that's been pushed to the edge for years: the mutants. If you'd like a more general overview of the X-Men's history, I'll leave the video at the end of this one going over the comic book history, as well as the popular animated series from the 90s and the iconic film franchise. But the X-Men aren't the only team that has a complicated history with the Avengers. The Fantastic Four also has a long comic history with the team, and that history might be even more important. My next video will explore this history and how it might factor into Doomsday, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you found all this information interesting. I'll see you all in the next video to unpack the history between the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Bye for now!